Hi, I'm Eric Legge with the Round Jewish Archives here at the Heinz History Center. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how researchers use the US Census to help them learn more about the people they're researching, their ancestors or whole communities even. So it's important to understand that the US Census is not primarily a research tool for historians. It's created to guide current policy. The federal government conducts the census every 10 years. And the point of it is to gather information about who lives in the country. That information is used to figure out congressional districts. It's also used by lawmakers to figure out how to allocate funds. And then the data in the aggregate form is used by community groups to figure out who's living in different neighborhoods and to figure out how they can provide funds and services to those people. The census contains a lot of private information, and so the government restricts it for a period of 72 years. So the 1950 census is still private. It's not going to be released until 2022. And the current census that we're doing in 2020 won't be released to the public until 2092. After 72 years, census data is no longer useful for public policy. It's no longer current, but it becomes very useful for researchers who are trying to learn more about the past. And because the US Census attempts to identify every single person in the country, it's a really useful way to do comprehensive research and also individualized research on particular people or on whole communities. Back in the day, if you wanted to do research using the US Census, it was very time consuming. You had to go to the National Archives, request microfilm files, and then go through them slide by slide by slide looking for the people that you were trying to find. Today, we're really fortunate. We have tools like Ancestry.com that have digitized a lot of the census records and have even transcribed them in some cases so that you can just type in a name and find the person that you're looking for. But sometimes it's hard to find those people. Sometimes the names are transcribed wrong. Sometimes people change the spelling of their name over time, or there's just other reasons why they don't pop up in the transcription. And that can be a point at which a lot of researchers hit a wall and don't know how to proceed. So what I want to do today is show you one technique for finding people in the census if they don't pop up in a transcription search. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show you one method that we use here at the Heinz History Center to find somebody that isn't appearing in the census. So the person that I'm looking for is someone named Max Landy. And he was one of the leaders of a small congregation, a small Jewish congregation in the Bloomfield section of Pittsburgh. And I was having trouble finding him through Ancestry.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Historic Pittsburgh, which is a great website that is a collaboration among various historic institutions here in Western Pennsylvania. And one of the great tools that they have is old city directories. So we're going to go to these city directories. We're going to search by date, and we're going to look for 1920, which was a year that one of the censuses was conducted. So here we have the Pittsburgh City Directory for 1920. And we're going to look through the city directory for Max Landy. So Landy is in the middle of the alphabet, so we'll start about halfway through the book. So here we have L-A-N-D, and we go down a little bit, and we find Landy. And here's Max Landy, and we see that he's living at 520 Wine-Biddle Avenue. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring up Google Maps. And we're going to find 520 Wine-Biddle. So we see that it's in the Bloomfield neighborhood, and we just want to get a sense of what the surrounding streets are. So now we're going to use a tool created by a genealogist named Steve Morse. Steve has created some incredible tools for finding information in the census. One of the biggest challenges of using the census is navigating the enumeration districts. So as the census takers were filling out their information, they broke the city into these enumeration districts. And they're not the kind of thing that you're going to find anywhere else. So it's not immediately obvious to know what enumeration district you live in. So if you go into this tool for US Census, and you go down here to the 1870 to 1950 large city ED finder, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to 1920, and we're gonna fill in the information that we know. So we know that this person is in Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, Pittsburgh. And just from that basic information, we can see that all of these different enumeration districts include Pittsburgh streets. So that's way too much to look through. So what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna look for Wine-Biddle, South Wine-Biddle Avenue. And already we can see we've narrowed it down to 7. But we wanna see if we can get it down even further. So let's look at some of the streets around here, the cross streets and the back streets. So Wine-Biddle, one of the cross streets is Miter Way. So let's go in here and add Miter Way. And we can see we've already brought it down to 2 of these. So let's add another and see if we can get it down further. So the back street is Gross. So we're gonna add Gross Street. Still the same. We'll do a couple more. Liberty Avenue is a cross street. So we'll add Liberty Avenue. And then Asia Way. So that's all it only lets us do 4. And we see that we've still stuck with 2. So what we're gonna do is, we know we're gonna have to look through 2 of these enumeration districts. So let's start with Allegheny 440. And if you click on it, you'll see that it's showing you the role, the microfilm role that this particular enumeration district is included in. So the enumeration districts on the microfilm run one after another. And so you need to know which series they are in so that you can search better. So we have this information now. What we're gonna do is go to the Internet Archive, which is a great repository of all sorts of digitized information. And we're gonna search for 1920 census, Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, and then it said that it was in roll 1517. So when we search for that information, we find that we get 1 hit. So we pull up the microfilm roll that's been digitized, and at the start of the roll, it's telling us what's in this roll, and we see here at the bottom it says that it includes enumeration districts 435 through 450. And so we're looking for 440, so that's exactly what we need. So now what we do is we try and, it's near the back end of the reel, so we're gonna just kind of pull to a random spot, and we see that this is, if you look in the top right corner here, you see it says enumeration district number 444. So that means we went a little too far and we need to go back. Here we see 442, so we need to go back a little more. And here we see 440. So now what we do is we'll zoom in a little bit and we'll just get a look at the census form. So the information that we have is the street address. And so you'll see on the left-hand side here, written along the margin, is the street that the census taker was walking down. So here, this is on Scioto Street. So we're just gonna kind of advance page by page, and we're gonna look for the street for Wine-Biddle Avenue. So we see Gross, Cypress. Here we see Cypress again. We saw that that was one of our cross streets. Still on Cypress. Now they're on U Street. And here we see Wine-Biddle Avenue. And here on the first one on this particular Wine-Biddle Avenue is our person, Max Landy. And so we zoom in. And now we've got the full census record for Max Landy. So we see he lived at 520 Wine-Biddle. We see he's the head of the household. We see his wife. We see the 3 sons that he has living with them. We get a sense of their ages, when they immigrated to the United States, where they were born, what language they spoke, and then we also get a sense of what they were doing for a living. So he was a grocer and he owned his own store. And so if you repeat that same technique for each of the censuses, you start to build out a profile of what your person was doing at various points in time. So for instance, with Max Landy, if we were to also look at the 1910 and 1930 census, we would find that he had been living in the Strip District, and then he moved into Bloomfield. The property value of his home increased. He went from working in a cigar store to owning a grocery store, which was a little bit of an upgrade in terms of his employment situation. And so we learned all these interesting details about the way that his life had changed over these 10-year periods. So you get a sense just from that tool of how to use the census and also what information is in the census. One of the things that a lot of researchers find when they use the census is that while it's a great starting point for individual research, and it's an excellent tool for figuring out information at the communal level, it often leaves a lot to be desired. As I said before, the point of the census is to help the government get basic data in order to guide policymaking decisions. But a lot of times researchers are looking for much more than that. They want to know what kind of person this person was, or they want to know what their opinions were, what they thought about the world. And the census doesn't give you that. And so one of the things that's important is when you're thinking about the census, not only to think about filling out the census as a civic duty, but also to think about what the census is saying about you and what it's not saying about you. And it says less about you than what it doesn't say. And so it's a great opportunity to think about what kind of records you have and what you're doing to preserve those records so that your descendants will be able to learn as much about you as they can and the life that you led. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was helpful, and don't forget to fill out the 2020 census. You only get to do it once every 10 years. Thank you.